In this video, we'll talk about parent-to-child communication using primitive data type. To understand how parent and child are communicating, first we need to understand @API decorator because this is the heart for the communication from parent to child. Okay, so till now in a component we have created a local properties like full name is a local property, right? But if I want to make it public so that other component can able to listen or to able to capture it, we want to create this public. And to create a property or a method to be public, we have to use @API decorator. So for that, first of all, you need to import @API from LWC package. So we are importing it here. And then you need to decorate your property. Like suppose username is my property and I want to make it public, I'll just decorate it with the @API. Similarly, you can do with the method. As soon as you append @API, it is accessible by the parent component as a HTML attribute. Okay, so let's read the slides quickly. To make a field slash property or method public, decorate it with @API decorator. When we want to express the property, we decorate the field with @API. Fields and property are interchangeable here. An owner component, in our case that is parent, okay, an owner component that uses the component in its HTML markup can access the component's public properties via HTML attributes. So as I said, if you define a property with @API, the parent component can access this property using the HTML attribute. We'll see everything in example. Then the public properties are reactive in nature, and if the value of property changes, the component's template re-render. It's similar to a normal property. Okay, so if you change its value and you are using it into HTML, its value gets updated. Okay, these are reactive in nature. So let's go to our first statement, that is first case. We are passing the simple data, that is a primitive data. Parent will pass some data and in the child will cache the data, and to cache the data we need a property, and that property should be public, and we're gonna change that property with the normal property to a public using @API decorator. So let's go to our VS Code and start writing the code. So I'm in my VS Code. First we're gonna create the component. So as we are talking about parent to child relationship or parent to child communication, we want two components. So I'll create the first component. I'll give this name P2C. This is just a notation to understand parent to child. Okay, and P2C parent component. And I'll create this. And the second component that I'm gonna use is, I'll say P2C alert component. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna build an alert component that will receive the data from the parent component, and that will receive only the basic data, that is the simple data here, right? Primitive data. So now I have two components. The first thing, I want my component to be exposed. So I'll go to the parent component. We don't want to change anything in the child component because child component gets embedded into the parent. Only the parent component should be exposed. And then we want to set the targets. I'll just add the targets so that this should be available into the app page. Based on your need, you can set the targets to the home page or other pages. So let's go and create an alert component first. And to do that, we can go directly to the Lightning Design System library, search for alert. I'm telling you the approach that we usually use in our real-time projects. Okay, so if I have to build something, I'll go, I want the red color bar sort of thing. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'll just copy paste the class from here. I'll just take this class or div, I'll go back and paste it. Okay, and based on our need we can change the styling. Okay, like there are many themes and all they are using. Based on your need you can change it. So in my case I need not whole class, but I need a alert class, so I can remove this notify. I want only SLDS notify alert class. I don't want texture or any other thing, and I just want the basic red color class, that is theme error. Error will gives us a red color. That's it. Okay, and apart from that, I want the our basic structure, that is lightning card. I'll say lightning card. I'll say title, parent, child, primitive, data, communication, and within the card I'll move my alert card. Okay, and here within the alert I can print, hooray, I got data. That's it. Okay, I haven't written anything right now in the JS file. Okay, I have only HTML, everything is static data, and now I'm gonna place my child component or the alert component in the parent component, and we already know how to do that. You need to call c hyphen p2c hyphen component hyphen alert hyphen component. So right now I'm just embedding the child component into the parent component. Okay, so now let's deploy this component and see, when we place our parent component, are we seeing our child component on the screen or not. So the component is deployed. I already created another app page, component communication. So let's place our component to this particular page. And here you can search P2C parent component. I'll drag it to the first column. I'll hit save, go back. Now you can see that the data is coming, our alert bar is coming, and everything is coming fine, right? But I want this data to be passed from the parent component. Okay, let's go to our component, and title was not coming because I gave the wrong attribute name. Title will come now. I want this data to come from the parent, right? So as I said, we need a power or a property that can receive the data from the parent, right? So I can create a property first. It's similar to the way you create the property. So I create a property message. Okay, this is the local property. This property can only be understood by this component, but I want this property to be a public property or exposed property. So I have to decorate it with the @API decorator. And to get this @API power, you need to import this from the LWC package. Now your message property is public property. Now this property can listen the data that comes from the parent. Okay, so now to use this property in the parent, sorry, this should be in your alert component. The child component we usually create @API, and we are creating importing API from LWC now. Now I want to receive the data from the parent. Go to the parent HTML where your component has been embedded. Right here, use that property as an attribute. Okay, so message is my attribute here, and now I want to pass the data, and the data that I want to pass here is the static data that we were using in the HTML of the child component. I just cut that, come to the parent component HTML, and just pass it directly. So I'm telling to this component, you will receive a data in the property message, and in the child component, it will receive the data because it's decorated with @API. As soon as it receives the data, you just bind this property to the HTML of alert component, right? So this is the basic flow. I'll repeat it again quickly. Okay, not here. I have to compare it. So first we embed the component, that is the alert component, into our parent component. I want to pass some data to the child, so I need a property name that is public in the child component. So we went to the child component, we create a message property and make it public using @API decorator. Now the message property has the power to receive the data. Now we come to the parent HTML and we use that property message and we are passing the simple data, that is a string. And as soon as you pass, the component loads, it receives the data, and wherever you have used this property in the HTML, you will see your data. Okay, let's deploy this and see. So the component is deployed. I refresh the page and now you can see that the alert is still showing the data correctly and the title of our card is also coming correctly, right? So this is the one way you can receive the data. Okay, let's play a little bit more in the same use case. So I want this heading to become from the parent only. So I'll go and create the another property in the child and I'll say API card heading, right? And then I'll go to my parent component. I'll use the attribute. And the catch here is attributes are always lowercase letter, right? They follow the kebab case basically. Okay, so you can't use the camel casing here. If your property is in the form of camel case, it should be converted into the kebab case, so it will be hyphen heading, right? So now we want to pass the data that is used in the heading. So I'll cut this data and I'll come back to my parent. I'll say, okay, you have to pass the data parent to child primitive data communication, and it will be received by a card heading property that is public in nature. So I'll come to the alert component JS. I'll see, okay, there is a @API. It means my card heading is exposed or a public property. I'll use this into the HTML directly. So I'll bind it here. Okay, let's deploy this and see if this is also working fine or not. This will work definitely fine. Let's refresh the page. And now you can see parent to child primitive data communication is coming fine and the text is coming fine. Now, as I said, the primitive data types are not only string, but it also number or your booleans as well, right? So let's quickly test that as well. So I'll go to the parent component and in parent, I'm gonna pass some number. I'll use a number property. I'll say number 20. I'll use a boolean property is valid, false. And now in the child component, what I'm gonna do here is I'll create those properties. So I'll say @API number and @API is valid. Okay, is valid is camel case, and in HTML I'm using in the kebab case, right? Let's print them as well in the HTML. So before message I'll print the number, I'll give the space, and after the message I'll print the boolean. Okay, and let's deploy this. So it should print 20 message and the is valid is false, so it should be the false at the end. So let's go for org again. So let's refresh the page. Now you can see that if I zoom it a little bit, the 20 is the number and false is the boolean value, and this is the string data, right? This is working fine. So we proved it. Primitive data you can pass directly from HTML. And the another key point that many people do mistake, if you defined an attribute but you are not assigned any value. Okay, if you define an attribute and you haven't assigned any value, by default the value will be true. Okay, so suppose is valid, I just define the attribute but I haven't initialized with any value or assigned any value. So on the screen by default it should show me true here. So if attribute is present in the HTML, its by default value is true. So just remember this. When you build the reusable component, these things are very helpful when you set the properties like is true, max length, min length in your components. So let's deploy this and confirm this as well. So till now we have learned many things, like you can pass the data in the form of string, number or a boolean. To cache the data from parent to child, we have to use @API. And if your property is camel case, you have to use kebab case in the HTML attribute. So let's go quickly and refresh the page. And now you can see that it's printing true because I haven't initialized with anything, but it was present in the attribute, so the default value is true. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video.